Well, it's that time of year again. You know, the time when it suddenly becomes appropriate for men to climb down chimneys without fear of unflattering euphemisms. That time when people think it's funny to stage elven crime scenes around their supposedly safe home. That time where the whole world pretends that Santa and Jesus aren't mutually exclusive figures for the sanctity of Christian Christmas. It's a time for making and spending money. And Santa's there to help you on both sides. Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
Then let's go. Are you the type of person who grew up with Tim Allen's Santa? Well, in case you are still disillusioned by the VHS cover, Santa Claus isn't spelled with an E at the end. It's a pun about the fine print in the contract, not the actual spelling of his name. Don't blame me though, blame Tim. Or actually, blame time. Mall Santa is an actual job. People get paid to dress up in a disguise and have children sit in their lap. It's basically socially sanctioned softcore pedophilia, and not only do we participate in it, we want people to know that we sat in a fat man's lap and told him our deepest desires. Daddy issues are nothing compared to Daddy Christmas issues. This is literally a character who goes around yelling ho ho ho, and we just mutually decided it would be a good idea to put children in his lap and have him ask them about their good behavior. It's basically like confession. Actually, now that I think about it, Santa does actually have a lot in common with Catholic priests. Santa has elves that work for him year-round to create his toys. I've never heard of elves getting paid a wage, have you? They're just Santa's little helpers, and I don't think they're allowed to unionize. And you can bet they don't have retirement packages. Elves tinker until they topple from exhaustion, with an IV bag of hot cocoa in their arm. They're sent out on the assembly line to work until they pass out again. It is deplorable. Santa has a team of reindeer who fly him all around on Christmas Eve to deliver toys to all girls and boys. Quick question. Do they get fed properly? Are they adequately watered? Does he use a whip to get them to move at the speed of light? If Santa didn't exist yet, and someone right now thought of him and put the idea out there, the media would crucify him. Both Santa and the guy who came up with the idea. Anyway, let's tackle the origins of Saint Nick, shall we? The only rival the man has for reinventions is Taylor Swift, but since she's never done a stint as a giant horned beast who steals misbehaving children, I'm gonna have to give her the lead. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with inventing yourself, but the original Santa didn't exactly have a vogue phase. The consensus is that the Saint Nicholas was a Greek bishop in the 4th century. He had a habit of giving to the poor, once famously paying the dowries of 3 young Christian girls so they wouldn't have to sell themselves. Of course, you can easily see the evolution from that to the guy who runs the Cold Elf Legion. Right? There's also nothing inherently wrong with being a saint, but there is sacrilege in being gluttonous. And boy oh boy was Saint Nick hoarding honors. Technically, his title is Saint Nicholas, Bishop of Myra, patron saint of children, sailors, fishermen, merchants, broadcasters, the falsely accused, repentant thieves, brewers, pharmacists, archers, and pawnbrokers.
The unburnt, the breaker of chains.
We're all pretty sure that the various versions of Saint Nick in the world today stem from his good deeds. But there are several physical attributes that were taken from none other than Odin. What the fuck, Santa? You don't steal from God. Especially not a god whose image is owned by Marvel. There was once a Finnish Christmas figure who delivered gifts to children, and his name was this, also known as Christmas Goat. Suddenly, Santa Claus came in and performed a hostile takeover, stripping all of the substance from this name while still keeping it. So Finnish kids literally call Santa a goat all the time, but he's okay with it because acquisitions and mergers gave him a hefty sum. Some regions of France and Belgium have a more traditional Santa Claus. Red suit, white beard, not a goat, but they have an alternative to elves. Whipping Father, or Father Whipper, depending on your translation, that follows Father Christmas around with a whip to spank the naughty kids. You see why mall Santas go with elves, right? Actually, now that I think about it, some Santas might prefer Father Whipper. Also, in France and Luxembourg, Santa is sometimes accompanied by a helper named Zwart Piet. For those of you who don't know, that translates to Black Peter. Now, like Jim and Huck Finn, there was a time where that was acceptable. Unlike Jim and Huck Finn, Zwarte Piet isn't limited to literature, and people still dress up in blackface for parades to portray Santa's helper. This sin is on Santa because he didn't file as an LLC, and now all of his personal assets are fair game. Did I mention Zwarte Piet was initially portrayed as an enslaved devil who had to help Santa? And when it came time to update the tradition, the Netherlanders were like, well, if we can't make him the devil, at least we'll make him black. Now, to be fair, I don't think anyone from the Netherlands have ever had anyone around them that don't have blue eyes, blonde hair, and pale fucking skin. It looks like milk. While Zwarte Piet might be, well, no, definitely is the most offensive of Santa's helpers, the concept of Santa flying around with a chained demon is not a one-off concept. Is it a metaphor for chaining up your inner devils? Is Santa really just anti-porn addiction? Is Mrs. Claus his accountability partner? Krampus, a goat-demon hybrid, is one of Santa's Dutch helpers, and yeah, he's also a metaphor for binding the devil to God's will. If a kid has been bad, Krampus takes all the gifts Santa gave them and leaves a silver branch behind. If the kid is good, he leaves the presents and gives them a golden branch. Considering gold's worth, let's see, $1,263.60 per ounce, and silver is only, let's see, $16.24 an ounce. I think it's clear why kids would want to be good all year round. Well, that and some other versions of Krampus shove bad children into sacks and ship them off to hell, which I guess is meant to motivate the less materialistic kiddos. Now, for a very long time, Santa and his helpers were only a piece of the Christmas puzzle. This started to change in the 19th century when Dutch immigrants came over and started to spread the story of Sinterklaas to the growing country. By 1863, Santa was making appearances in Harper's Weekly, drawn by political cartoonist Thomas Nast. Nast kept on drawing Santa, and it's because of him that Santa became a large, jolly, red-suited dude. Before that, he had only been gaunt and slim and somewhat stern. By 1969, George P. Webster started writing about the big guy's home in the North Pole. And by 1889, thanks to poet Catherine Lee Bates, Santa got married. Then in 1897, when a young girl wrote into the New York Sun asking if Santa was real, the World and, well, editor decided he was. The Santa whose lap you sat on, the one who seemed ageless and eternal, was really born over a 40-year period in the 19th century. Honestly, if you ask me, it's a bit of a letdown. Not only is he a recent addition, but he's also a sellout. Santa started appearing in Coca-Cola ads in the 1920s. Coca-Cola shaped Santa's image more than anyone else, depicting him laughing and playing and handing out toys to girls and boys. Well, toys and Coca-Cola. And finally, if you're wondering about this more modern soda Santa's companions, Coca-Cola didn't pair him up with a chained-up demon or an offensive appropriation of culture. In 1942, Coca-Cola paired Santa up with his very own buddy, Sprite Boy. As in like Sprite, like the drink that Coke sells, but also Sprite as in like an elf.
Smell like beef and cheese, you don't smell like Santa.